The Crown Tower is a tower building that we completed down on the Sydney Harbour waterfront. It creates part of the Barangaroo developments down there, primarily a hotel and residential complex that has a large retail and resort component that creates the four-storey podium at the base. Crown Tower was part of an international design competition, but what drew us to it primarily was the chance to work on such an incredible site. Sydney is an entirely unique and wonderful city in the world. That site being right on the waterfront creates challenges unlike any other. There was a very ambitious brief, there was an awful lot to fit into it, but also because of the calibre of the competition, the nature of the site, and the fact that it is in this truly unique part of Sydney, we had to deliver something that was able to stand up to that brief. The idea that was developed through the competition and actually carried on being developed after we won it was this idea of an inhabited sculpture, developed initially by Chris Wilkinson off the back of a previous competition that he'd entered with his son that unfortunately was never realised. But it allowed us to play with the idea of creating a very functional building that responded very geometrically to the site and also then allowed us to respond hopefully with something quite elegant and sophisticated. The intention is that the building itself rotates and twists to celebrate that view towards the Opera House and towards the bridge. The magic of the building comes where the various different components that create that geometry come together. By creating a twisting building, we almost gave ourselves an extra challenge that needed to be solved. The way we started to unpack this and really to resolve this was when, with the structural team, we managed to develop a helical column grid. So the columns on the building and the exterior don't run vertically, top to bottom, as you would normally expect with a tower of that size. They actually rotate with the building. So that allows us to have a very similar arrangement on each floor with the columns tracking. The facade also then tracks with that. The winter gardens and terraces that we installed in the building also track with all of that. And that allows us to create this really quite rational internal layout. So the internal architecture of the building is a lot more rational than it would seem necessarily from the external. Going back to the original idea of creating this inhabited sculpture, we really needed to create this beautiful, elegant, monolithic external appearance to the building, and that needed to be done primarily in a glazed facade in order to get the real quality of light and play that you get down there. That required us to work with these incredible engineers that helped us develop a system of cold warped glass. So all of the panels are very regular, but they are installed on site and bent into place on site. It allows us to create a continuously curved external skin that really does satisfy that inhabited sculpture external appearance that we were aiming for. There are some instances you'll notice on the back of the building there's a slightly different facade system, and so where the geometry was too curved, we had to switch it to a triangulated system because the curvature was too great to be able to bend it on site. But actually this creates another part of the character of the building that I do particularly like. And so again, with this incredible light that you have in Sydney, it just sparkles as it changes throughout the day, and that was something that we were really excited to play with. The building is located in the world's first carbon neutral precinct. The idea of sustainability has been something we've tried and we've embedded into our practices from very early on in the practice's history. How do you control the solar gain on a building of this scale? More than 40% of the building is actually solid. So there's an awful lot of challenge and a great load of development in terms of creating the solar panels and the glazed panels to have the consistent external appearance, so that we actually do manage to control the solar gain really quite effectively and in a passive way without having to rely entirely on active cooling measures. The requirements for shading on this building evolved quite naturally with the client. Sydney being an incredibly bright, sunny, warm place, we always knew we were going to need very high performance shading. That, coupled with the specification that we were asked to deliver by the clients for internal environments, meant that we really did need to work with quality shading products.
So Guthrie Douglas have delivered projects in over 50 countries around the world. We've become the global go-to in what we do, technical engineered shading solutions. We take pride in delivering long-term solutions that are going to work for the life cycle of the building. That will often mean working with the design team to design a shading solution together with the glass to deliver facade performance. So I remember Guthrie Douglas's first involvement in the Crown Tower project. I took a phone call from sunny Sydney, from Horiso, from our Australian partners over there, and they said, look, we've got this new hotel project right on Sydney Harbour. It's a bit of a challenge. No one's been able to come up with a shading solution due to the curved nature of the facade. Could you have a look at it? And so our engineers got on the case. I thought we could deliver something. And then we started talking to the design team and the delivery team over in Sydney and came up with a solution. So the nature of the design was that every part of the building would have a stunning view, whether that's looking over the Harbour Bridge or looking out over the Sydney cityscape. But of course, with every part of the building having a view, what that also means is there's a lot of natural daylight streaming through the building. And so that was one of the things that made shading crucial to the project. And whether you're coming there as a resident, you're coming to stay in the hotel or to visit, you have a certain expectation of what a building like that is going to feel like. And certainly as a resident in the apartments, you expect everything to just work seamlessly. So by designing shading into the facade at an early stage, you give yourself the opportunity not just to develop a system which is going to result in a high performance facade from an energy and sustainability point of view, but it's also going to result in an internal environment which gives you comfort, which meets the aesthetic requirements of the design.
The internal environment obviously is critical because there's a hotel and it is residences as their main facilities. And so if we don't manage to shade those effectively, there's a risk that it wouldn't be as successful a project as we wanted it to be. You need this incredible blackout performance, and that's a level of service that was expected as a baseline when we're working with clients like Crown. And so creating this quality of internal environment inside a building, that external skin is changing and it is warping and there's nothing particularly parallel or consistent. It does create a particular challenge, and it is something that we knew we needed to work through from an early part of the design.
So once we got into discussions with WilkinsonEyre, we saw that they were designing this curved facade around the concept of 3 petals as an inhabited sculpture. Absolutely stunning project and beautiful idea. And what that meant for a shading solution was, well, each window was going to be slightly different, each window was going to be curved, and there really wasn't a standard solution that was going to work for the project as a whole.
The biggest challenge in terms of the brief that we were given was getting our heads around the facade, how it works and how we need to integrate it. So it wasn't just we need a glare blind, we need a blackout blind, we need this. It was we need different types because of the different nature of the building. So it was really getting to the crux of how do we make our systems integrate with that facade, which was the basis of the challenge, being both glare and blackout. And in this aspect, we were brought in early enough so that we could work with the design of the facade, so that the side guides could integrate and flow, so it all looked seamless. So the solution that we provided for the project, as with all complex facade projects, starts with the basis of our system, which is the TESS 660. And that's at the core, because we know that our tension systems work, and we know that we can twist it and we can put the fabric through angles. And then from there, we then overlaid it using our engineering team in-house. And they then worked out how we would then abut one blind to another at the head and come up with a bracketry detail that then worked with the building. So we had to then do some customization of the system to make it work so that it's integrated and that the guides fit with the mullions and that then the fabric runs smoothly. And that was really the essence of it.
Well, for a project like this, we would create a number of different mock-ups, systems for all of the different window types to demonstrate how the system is going to work. And quite often the design team and the client will want to come in and see the system working, choose the different options associated with it and understand how it's going to integrate into the project. In the case of Crown Tower, we built up several mock-up systems in our factory here in Warwick in the UK. Simple timber frames, but demonstrating the systems and how they were going to work. And the design team came in, had a look and got to know the systems, chose the different options and approved the design in that way. So on a project like this, the design team is looking to minimise risk, and the testing regime was quite tough. We undertook a number of different tests. We did cycle testing on the system, up to 40,000 cycles, which was more than 50 years of typical use. We did heat testing on the fabrics to make sure they were going to perform on-site in the same way they would in the factory. We looked at different cycle testing on actuators and other elements of the system. And that testing was witnessed by the client and really just gave everybody the peace of mind that it was going to be a fit-for-purpose solution that wasn't just going to work for a few months or even years, but would be there for the long term.
So the control of the blinds was a very specific requirement because it's a multifunction building. So the public open spaces need one set of controls and you want all of the blinds to operate together, whereas your apartments and your hotel bedrooms, they need to be isolated and they need to work individually so that a tenant can come into their apartment and they can operate their blinds from an iPad and they're not affecting the rest of the floor. And the same with the hotel room. Somebody can go into their hotel room and they're operating their blinds so that it's isolated. You also want access to your controls for any reprogramming needs. And therefore the controls have to be of a particular size to fit into the riser within those bedrooms. So it's all condensed, whereas in a public space or the more open restaurant areas, you can put them in a riser and that serves the whole area. So you've got a bit more leeway. So between ourselves and our partner Horiso, we've got extensive knowledge of controls, and that helped in selection of the motor because the motor goes into our system over here in the UK. So we can work between ourselves to select the right system of both control and motor because we have to have certain capabilities of torque to drive our tension blind.
So the Crown Tower project was a great example of how early collaboration between design team and shading designer can lead to results that you otherwise wouldn't be able to achieve. Well, you definitely can't deliver a project in Sydney based in Warwick, and our Australian partners Horiso were absolutely brilliant throughout. They worked with us on the design of the system, they built up the product in their facility locally in Sydney, and ultimately they made sure that the product went in to the standard that the client was expecting.
The success of the project really is always down to the collaboration, and we couldn't have done it without the collaboration of WilkinsonEyre, the designer. We couldn't have done it without our delivery partner, Horiso, and then Climate Ready Engineering, who designed and developed the control system to actually make the things work.
Without that kind of collaboration and the input from these fantastic consultants, it becomes very difficult to realise something quite as ambitious as the inhabited sculpture that we were intending to build. So now the building is complete and we've seen the fruition of some of these technical challenges that we've been discussing. We're incredibly proud of this building, of the design and how it sits within the wider Brambury precinct.
Crown Tower is an astonishing building. I mean, you walk up to it and it's jaw-dropping. And we're just delighted to have been a part of such an iconic project for Sydney.
It's been fantastic for our business because it's led on to so many other projects. We're working on the buildings next door, the residential apartments, and we're just in the course of delivering 50 Martin Place, again with the same partners. So it's been a really fantastic thing for us.
The end result we've achieved is testament to everybody involved.